And Casey, now it's your turn.
All right. Well, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Deputy Superintendent Jen Pastor. Deputy Pastor has been a Brookline police officer since June of 2000. She worked as a patrol officer, as a safety officer. She worked in the as an intelligence detective. She started her early introduction to Rotary, I think somewhere around 2002, when she was first introduced by then Captain Peter Scott, and came back to the station sharing stories about happy dollars, which she was she was promoted to sergeant in 2011, where she led the department through the accreditation process and started the department's crisis intervention team. And her work has really put the Brookline Police on the leading edge of police response to mental health crises in the nation. She was promoted to lieutenant in 2017, continuing her work with crisis intervention, amongst many other things. She created a peer support team, not just for our own officers, but also responding in a regional team to officers that have been exposed to heavy stress on the job. Trains police departments throughout Norfolk County in crisis intervention. Deputy Pastor moved into the community service division in 2020, just prior to the pandemic, where she, amongst all of her other duties, also became the department's PIO and took on the supervision of not just myself, but a team of 10 community service officers working, doing many things from school resource officers or walk and talk, elder affairs, crime analysis, training division, and so on. Last month, she was promoted to the rank of deputy superintendent, making her the first woman in the department's history to hold this high of a rank. She now leads the community service division and continues, I'm sorry, Jen, to still be my boss. Deputy Pastor was born and raised in Brookline. Many of you may know her family. She's a Canney, one of 8 children. She's married to Mark Pastor, and they have 4 beautiful children. And in her free time, Deputy Pastor is pursuing her master's degree in social work from Boston College.
Very nice.
Thank you for being here tonight, boss.
If I add, since you said her family, her brother Mike Canney, who joined Rotary one time, and then his work, he had overload, he couldn't stay, but we know him very well. Yeah,
Mike's a wimp. We gotta put some more responsibility on that guy. I can't even begin to tell you all how happy I am to be back. And starting to connect with this group. Thank you to Casey for the invitation. Some of my fondest memories are attending the live meetings at Chef Chow's place with Peter Scott, who I still maintain is probably one of the best bosses I ever had. I miss him every day. But I just have memories of smiles and happiness and goodwill and just people with genuine good hearts and truly good intentions. And I can't thank you all enough for the work that you do. And I hope that Casey didn't oversell you on a presentation that that I had when you all said you're interested in what I had to say. Is I don't know. I like to listen more than I like to talk. But I guess this job, the deputy superintendent position, is new to me, and I've been tasked with leading the community service division, which really, I can't begin to tell you how blessed I feel to have been given that assignment. A promotion is great, and I was expecting to go probably to patrol, which is the largest division. It would have been an interesting set of responsibilities for me and something new for me, but community service really is where my heart is. And so I was given this opportunity, and I had to leap and I had to take it on. I think that, as Casey mentioned, I do have 4 children. My oldest is 10, my baby is 5, and I have twins that are 7. Every day is a new adventure at home and at work. And I think even before kids, if you were to boil down my approach to police work and to public safety, it probably has always been a maternal approach, even before I had children of my own. I think that we have so many people, as you all know, in our community that need love and they need care, and it looks very different for different people. But as a department, we try to pick up all the pieces that get left behind by other silos, right? As you all know, probably people call 911 for any number of reasons. Some people don't call us that probably should call us. Other people insist on calling 911 because there's a truck being too loud idling in their driveway, and we catch everything, from the violent, true emergencies to, the mundane kind of noise complaints. So we really do have to be ready for everything. But, I think that I feel very strongly that our department is filled with amazing men and women that really bring their best, and they want to do their best for this community every single day. And that makes my job pretty easy. If I can help people connect in new or different ways to the community, I'm happy to be that conduit. I feel extremely lucky to have Casey in my division because you all know her, but she's just a natural. And I think we share a lot of the same philosophies and mindsets. We like to connect people. We like to do the right thing for people. And we like to meet people wherever they are and try to get them connected to the help that they need. I love kids. That's always been true. And it's probably why I had 4 of them. My passion and I guess my passion is making sure that the kids in our community have a great place to grow up where they feel supported, ideally, by parents. And that's not always the case. And, we're here to fill some of that void when we need to. We're here to connect them to the people that can fill some of that void. I saw so many amazing people in the video that you just had shown. The Teen Center under Alicia's leadership is going to continue to do amazing things. I know they were off to a slow start again because of the pandemic, like everybody. We have great connections through housing, through steps, through the social workers that are in place there. And I think what I'd like to see more of is that community, the bridge building. I think there needs to be some healing that happens in our community coming out of the pandemic, coming out of all of the the movements that are focused on social justice. I think this is a real time, a moment that we should seize and do a lot of listening, a lot of healing, and figure out how we can move forward together. And I think that happens, when we listen to one another and continue to build bridges and really do things together. The police department can't lead everything. We can't do everything. Rotary can't. You do a whole lot. But I think we can all do more when we work together, and that's what I would love to see more of. I don't have a lot to say. I would like to. I'm always interested to hear from groups and from individuals about where you think we should be doing more, where you think we should be doing better. Some of the ideas I have are to kind of revive our old programs. The RA.D self-defense program in particular is one that I love. Our car seat safety program is, it's funny because even though I had been a police officer, I think for 11, 12 years when I had my first baby, when I had to put my baby in a car seat, I panicked. I swear my heart stopped. I did not, I knew who I could call. I knew that I had done it for other people before, but oh my gosh, is that terrifying. And if that's, it's such a simple thing for our technicians to do. They're so skilled. But there's so many little things that we can be doing to really make our, continue to make our community such a special place to be. The CIT work, again, is another passion. It's going to take a while, I think, to help people really heal from the emotional toll that the pandemic has taken on us. And it's hard to even know where all those needs are going to be. And you'll probably, if you haven't heard a lot in the news about, the debate over police responding to mental health crisis, I will be the first to say, as, coming out of my first year of social work school, I don't think that we necessarily should be. I will just say that we are. And so my philosophy is that as long as people are going to continue to call us for help with mental health issues, whether it's for themselves or for loved ones, we need to be trained to respond to that. And that's why I will continue to support the work around crisis intervention training. We do have a social worker in our department who's phenomenal. And there's a lot of there's a lot of focus, I think, in the media around dividing teams and, pitting social workers versus police officers. And I think, like most things, the answer is to work together and not compete for those kind of jobs. There's plenty of work for all of us. And what else? The High School Citizens Academy has continued to go. Again, another one of, I guess I have a lot of favorite programs, and this is this is why I'm happy to be here. The High School Police Academy is so much fun. It's so great to interact with those juniors and seniors in high school when they're at such a key point in their lives and their lifespan. We used to do an academy for, I don't know, grown-ups, I guess is probably a better word, but just for the general citizenry. And I would love to see that come back as well. And I'd love to hear if anybody has any thoughts on that. If it's something you think there'd be an interest in, or if you'd rather see single night kind of special interest topics. We want to hear, we want to know what the community wants from us. And that would be something that's super helpful. We're out there playing basketball, we're having ice cream, we're having a youth academy. We're trying to kind of come out of the gate strong post-pandemic and remind people that we're still here and we're excited. We're as excited to be back interacting with people as everybody else. And I think I probably talked too long, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have it. Yeah.
Ken?
Thanks, Elias. Thank you, Jennifer. That was great presentation. Joe Canney, class of 77, is he a relative?
Cousin.
Cousin
And I
Joe.
don't tell a lot of people.
All right, I remember him well.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Joe's a spirited young man.
Yes. 61 years old, young, but yeah.
Yes. Young, spirited young man. Lots of passion.
Good. I do have an actual question. So I'm glad that you mentioned, alternate means of dealing with mental health and that this has become a big issue. But along with that, I think, and something that gets glossed over a little bit is substance abuse, both legal and illegal substance abuse, and how maybe that's not per se a policing issue anymore, or maybe shouldn't be a policing issue anymore. And I wanted to know how receptive you personally are to that, to viewing substance abuse as a non-criminal matter, and what programs we might think about to stop punishing people who have a health issue, mental health issue, specifically a substance abuse issue.
I'm 100% on board with the philosophy that it's not, addiction is not, it should not be criminalized. I think we've come a long way. If you look at systems approaches, when Casey first started 22 years ago, we were locking people up for residue in a needle, in a hypodermic syringe. Marijuana, not the small amounts that you might hear, when people are trying to push a narrative, but we were locking people up for marijuana. We now know, marijuana is now legalized. We have, around opiates, we have a Good Samaritan law where we encourage people, if you are using opiates, typically opiates, and somebody overdoses, we have laws in place that will protect you if you call 911. We want to get there. We carry Narcan, all of us, and we have, I think, since 2014. And we want to revive people. And part of the reason for onboarding our social worker was to be a resource for people who do want to get help and get connected to treatment. So we were designated, I think, back in 2015 as a PARI agency, which is the Police Assisted Addiction Recovery Initiative, or more commonly known as the Gloucester Model. So anybody that walks in or anybody that calls, if they want help getting connected to addiction services, typically they would come see me or come see Annabelle, and I'll try to get somebody trained up to take over some of that responsibility. I get a list every morning of detoxes, of stabilization beds, how many openings they have, how far they are from Brookline, how many male, how many female beds, and the kinds of services they offer, just in the hopes that somebody will call us and say that they need help or they have a loved one that needs help. Less glamorous are the Section 35s that we're able to do over, with the assistance of the court. It's a last case resort. And if people aren't aware, there's a small list of people that can petition the court to have somebody committed to treatment against their will. It's not a criminal process, it's a civil process, but a police officer can initiate it. What I like to do is encourage a family member to initiate that process. It has to be a blood relative or a spouse. It can't be a friend. It can't be in-laws. And I typically would go over to court with somebody, help them fill out the affidavit, approach the judge to see about getting that warrant of apprehension. And if I'm too in the weeds, you can, and anybody wants to reach out after this or at any time, certainly, hopefully Casey can share my email, my phone number, but I like to remind people, just because people assume Brookline, it's wealthy, there are no problems here with addiction. And for a while, that was more or less my entire job, was getting people connected to addiction, to treatment for addiction issues. And it can feel so isolating. I'll share a story I had when I was up in detectives a little over 10 years ago. I came in on the day shift and the night guys were still here, which is usually a sign that something has gone wrong on the overnight shift, right? And we had the gas station that used to be right before Huntington Ave had been robbed. So if somebody came in, they motioned that they had a firearm, they robbed the attendant and they were gone. So the night guys were going through the footage. They were so excited to have the VHS tape that caught it. And as they played it back, I recognized the person that had robbed the gas station, and it was my second cousin. And he had been struggling with addiction. He was the typical textbook story that you hear, somebody that got pain pills, got addicted to pain pills, had to keep chasing that high, and found himself addicted to heroin to the point that he robbed a gas station in his own town. And that was a low point, for me, but it was a little bit of the catalyst to help me get involved in the type of work I'm involved in now.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question, Jennifer. Thanks for sharing that. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's not one of us on this call right now who doesn't have a story about somebody close to them.
Absolutely.
And I worry about those people who are treated like criminals when that's clearly not what their problem is. So. Anything creative that you have on how to deal with this most core of social issues, I'm interested in hearing and interested in working on.
I do also I sit on 3 boards. I sit on the Chamber of Commerce. I sit on the NAMI Massachusetts board, the National Association for Mental Illness for Massachusetts, and also the Women Thriving board. So Ann Brackett did a good job on the video as well. So they might seem a little bit scattered, but what they all have in common is that it's, the common goal of just helping people get through whatever, because usually there's some underlying issues that are commonalities, anxiety, depression, trauma, for sure. And I don't, punishment, we're not going to arrest our way out of a drug problem. It's time to think smarter about how we're doing what we're doing.
Thanks.
I'm just going to add that the deputy has been a leader in our department and moving forward our diversion programs, which, the effort there is to really decriminalize people, behavior when they're struggling and, keep them out of the criminal justice system and redirect them into areas where they can access resources, whether that's mental health or substance abuse and otherwise. And the deputy's been a leader for our department and identifying those resources and putting these programs in place.
I have a question. We've had a lot of issues arise recently over race in Brookline. I think one of the police officers just won, or was it a fire officer who just won a suit against the town? And there have been people complaining. What is the police department doing to address training for the officers on surrounding racial issues and having a egalitarian policies in place?
So in terms of police department training, I feel comfortable saying, part of our accreditation, and, not everything is accreditation and policies, but we have been accredited since 2013. And in order to meet that, the state requires that we are trained at least once a year in anti-bias training.
Mhm.
We do a little bit more than that. And we also do what's required under the Mass Municipal Training Council. I'm an instructor for the Fair and Impartial Policing Program. As well, I was recently trained as an ABLE instructor, and ABLE stands for Active Bystandership in Law Enforcement. That training to me was particularly exciting. It drew on a lot of, I'm kind of a social science geek, and I love to hear about some of the psychology, sociology experiments from the 60s and 70s, and try to get into not just like the CSI, why criminals do what they do, but why humans do what they do. And, one of the things, if you're familiar with like the Milgram experiments from the 60s, where there was you can stop me if you are, but basically it had somebody come in, the subject of the experiment was tasked with, they were told they were doing a study on pain compliance, and they would ask somebody a question. They would have the actual subject of the investigation, apply a small shock every time the person answered the question incorrectly. And the point of the experiment from the people on the other side of the mirror was to see how far they could get the person to turn the knob. And if you've ever seen the videos, it's some of the most disturbing video you'll ever see. People when they were told to inflict pain on somebody, they did what they were told to do, no matter how many, to the point where they thought that they were shocking people who were dead, and they continued to do it because they didn't know how to get out of the situation they were in. And part of the ABLE training is really giving our officers the tool to step in and to intervene on one another, to avoid incidents like what we saw in Minneapolis. And the training was in place prior to that. In other parts across the country, it's kind of making its way around, but it was really co-designed by psychiatrists and by law enforcement to kind of, strike that balance between, find how we can make human behavior, change in ways that have been proven through social sciences, and still apply it to the law enforcement culture, right? And make officers comfortable intervening when they observe another officer's behavior, even if that officer is a supervisor, if they observe something that's completely unacceptable, give them the tools they need to be able to step in to intervene and to stop it. So we'll be rolling that out in the fall, and I'm pretty excited about that. We've done a lot of training on implicit bias. We've tried to do it in a way that doesn't make people defensive. I think I don't know if Casey would agree, I think we've had a lot of success with that. We've done some out of the box thinking. We had a consultant come in, Dr. Cox, if you've met him. We did a tour of the Old South Meeting House. We walked the Freedom Trail. We looked at the West End Museum and tried to understand history so that we're not doomed to repeat it, right? And we just try to, keep expanding some of the things we think about to really broaden our horizon a little bit out of the criminal justice realm and look at things from a social systems approach.
That sounds very positive.
I think so.
I must say, and I think it's common, but I like to ask a question too. In the type of business I'm in, my place sometimes is like Grand Central Station. There's a lot of people of all kinds going by, people trespassing, people coming for all kind of things, all kind of personalities. We have to deal with them. And the few times we had to call the police, I must say that the way Brookline Police acts is very professional, very well, to a point of where the intention was never to arrest anyone. The intention was always to resolve the problem best possible and get the problem disappear. And I thought that, and I give you a lot of credit for that, because one time my life was on the line and we made a 911 call. And that was about less than 8 months ago. I mean, the guy was ready to smash me. I mean, and he was able. He's like 3 times taller than me, and I'm not tall at all. You know that. And big, and it almost became a race issue where you know, I was like, why is that? But the police that came, the 2, 3 that came, handled it so well, and apologies from that customer start to run down, and he walked away with friends. I mean, that's I really applaud you and applaud the training, because that all comes from training. I think it doesn't come just natural. It's training. But what and this would be my question regarding the rhetoric we kept hearing about the police defunding. What do you think of that?
I'm not trying to avoid a question. I think my computer froze. Hold on. Are you there?
Yeah, it did freeze.
Okay, wait. I can hear you now.
Yeah, your network bandwidth is a little bit low.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So was your question, what do I think about defunding?
Yeah, well, there was a lot. I mean, where do you stand with those people that calls for defunding the police? I am a believer that if you want to improve police work, we need to put more funds into it, not defund it. I mean, where do you stand with that? What do you think that's going? What's happening now?
I think that I do try to understand the sentiment that drives it. But again, I think politicians and media have pitted us against one another in sort of a fight for this or that, right? And I think that we have social workers at the high school and they're good at what they do. We have a social worker here in our department. She's very good at what she does. And our police officers are good at what we do. I don't think the answer is an either or approach. And I think there's a lot I could say. I think that really the answer is that, I believe that social services need to be funded, but right now, the police department, if you call your psychiatrist's office or your social worker's office, and it's not Monday through Friday from 10 to 5, the message that, or maybe even it is in those hours, and the message you're going to hear is, if this is an emergency, call 911.
Yep.
That's true no matter where you call. So, I would not be opposed to looking at reducing our budget when you're showing if we don't have the calls to support the budget. But right now, our calls are going up. And I imagine that's going to continue to be the case. So to defund us now without a safety net for all of those people who have been relying on us is dangerous. And some of the problems locally with our local politics, the people that my team interacts with every day, my school, the families that rely on my school resource officers, the families that rely on the unit formerly known as Walk and Talk that were assigned to housing, they're busy trying to survive. I mean, I work, I'm educated, I have a husband. I have 4 kids and a full-time job, and it's really hard. Making it, Casey asked me to come to this meeting and I was like, great, I just have to make 12 calls to make sure that this is taken care of, this is taken care of, this is taken care of, right? If you are struggling financially, if you're a single parent, you can't go to meetings, you can't be a part of the conversation, you can't get up and say that, and it's embarrassing. We would never ask any of the people who need us to get up and share their stories with the public, because for one thing, we've seen the way that they get, you know, some of the things they get labeled, some of the attacks that they've been on social media. I mean, it's Bananaville out there sometimes, you know, and our people are just trying to survive. And we're just trying to help them do that. And it's, you know, it's not for the glory. It's not for, you know, it's not for the paychecks. It's just because the people that work here are really amazing men and women, and they just want to do right by their community. So defunding to me, while our calls are continuing to go up without a safety net in place, is so irresponsible, and so dangerous. And it's heartbreaking when I think about the men, women, and children who are actually going to pay the price.
Well,
If you want, if you want my honest feelings on that, but it's just
No, that's a perfect, a good answer. I like that.
I was wondering if you had any thoughts why the school committee removed the school police officer.
I think a misunderstanding, and I think some words were twisted, and I think it was short-sighted and done a little bit under the cover of darkness, and the people that should have had seats at the table in making those decisions weren't invited to the conversation, and were specifically uninvited from the conversations.
See, when we're talking about crisis intervention, do you think that the mandate of the 911 system should be expanded so that they can better direct the appropriate people to a particular event that might occur, where maybe it's not an issue that policing generally has to be involved with, but one that maybe some other crisis intervener might do a more effective job, because your mandate really limits your choices in how you react to a particular situation.
Yeah, I think if we think about, so every state operates a little bit differently in terms of laws and policies and how we can do what we do. People in Massachusetts call 911, and they typically, the options are police, fire, EMS. Here in Brookline, if the call is for medical, all three go. There is an option that people know if they are somebody, if you're a parent of a teenager, for example, who is known to our crisis intervention team, and we have some information on your child, you can call us and say you just need a crisis intervention team officer. And that officer who's specially trained or designated will come out. And ideally they know your child and they're able to help in that moment of crisis. Massachusetts, I mean, every city and town in Massachusetts falls under the umbrella of an emergency service provider for psychiatric care. In Brookline, we fall under the BEST team. In the North Suffolk BEST team, they cover Boston, some surrounding cities and towns. So what that means is if you have Mass Health, if you're uninsured, you can call the BEST team and they will send out a crisis clinician, and the state mandate lays it out that they're supposed to be able to get to you in under an hour. The problem is that if you're an adult with private pay insurance, they don't come out.
Yeah.
And so most of our residents, a lot of our residents in Brookline are private pay insurance customers. If a police officer makes that call, they will come out. Again, they don't have cars with lights and sirens, and they could be coming from Quincy, to get to you. in Brookline. So that's, where they come up with the hour time frame. And people don't always have that amount of time. If they do, and they meet that criteria, it's fine. They'll always come out for kids. But again, it's just the response time. Can you wait an hour? So for those situations where a parent isn't already connected to services and they're wondering, do I need to bring my child to the ER for a psychiatric crisis, and they feel like they can give it an hour, we would encourage them to call the BEST team to come out. And the schools can call BEST, although they usually have their own social workers on board as well. We are a little bit, it's a little bit of a tricky situation that we're in, because our goal is public safety and keeping a person safe. If somebody, for us, the criteria for a Section 12 commitment, they have to be an imminent risk to themselves or somebody else. So if somebody says they're suicidal and it's, clear that it's, that there is some intent there, we would fill out the Section 12 paperwork and send that person to the hospital for an evaluation. Maybe they're voluntary. We're trying to work with our officers to fill out that paperwork if somebody is kind of on the fence about whether or not they want to go, because if they are suicidal or homicidal or unable to care for themselves in the community, we want them to go. And what the Section 12 paperwork does is mandate that they get seen by psychiatry before they leave. We can't commit somebody to a hospital. We just commit, we write the paper, and they have to get cleared by psychiatry before they can leave the ER, or the doctor on scene makes a determination that they get admitted. So our goal is to keep people, to get people into treatment. And then once they get to the hospital, they're faced with a system that's trying to clear them out of the ER and treat them in the community if possible, because that's the least expensive. And that's what saves the insurance company money. So we're a little bit at odds there with what we're trying to do. I think we can all agree that deinstitutionalization was the right move in the 60s. Seeing some of those, the old footage and hearing some of the stories from what was going on there, locking people away, is completely inhumane. But what we're doing right now is clearly not working. I mean, we see people that, we'll see them in the community. We've had a run-in with them. We Narcan them, for example, if they've overdosed on opiates. We send them to the emergency room, and we can see them in Dunkin' Donuts sometimes 3 hours later. And we're like, what is going on? Like, oh yeah, they gave me the name of a social worker. I'm supposed to call them in a couple of days. And I get it. It's not to say the doctors or the staff at the hospital are bad, but everybody has to work. Everybody's working within their own systems and the missions of their own organizations. And sometimes it does feel like we're at odds. I don't know if that answered your question. I mean, I can talk for days, but I don't know if that answered your question or not. You guys thought Casey was chatty.
I assure you that it answered my question, and that I am a supporter of the police. I know that you are necessary for a civilized society, and I applaud the hard work that gets done. But like all institutions and all human endeavors, there is always room for improvement.
Exactly.
That's all I have
Agreed.
to say on the matter.
I agree. And I think that we do tend to see fewer, there's sort of a running joke in our training division, like all of our training videos on what not to do tend to come from the South. Up here in the Northeast, and in Brookline in particular, most of our officers have at least a bachelor's degree, if not a master's degree. We have a couple of attorneys who are here as police officers. I think it starts with a highly educated pool of applicants, and then we encourage ongoing training. Our academy is 6 months. There are places you hear about in the South where they just hire them and then they put them on the road and they tell them, we'll get you to an academy whenever you can. Policing is not, it's not standardized throughout the country. It looks very different depending on where you are. And up here in the Northeast, it's not to say that it can't happen here. It's not to say we're perfect, but there are definitely reasons why, in my completely unbiased opinion, we're better, better at what we do, and have better outcomes. But that's money, a lot of that's money for training, money for supplies, money.
So we're talking refund the police.
Refund,
You said it.
not defund.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Add funds to the
Yeah.
police.
yeah.
That is true. That is true. Jan, thank you very, very much for your talk. You really enlightened us with a lot of things that you went about. It's a lot of information, lots of things that we knew, and some we didn't. But you kept us enlightened and knowledgeable about what's happening in your profession. And like Steve said, we all supporters of the police. We do support the police. We do support your work, and we wish you all the luck you that can come near you, around you with that area. So and anything you need from us, please come and ask. We're here to help and support and
In case.
be good citizens. Okay.
Oh,
Thank you
you're
very, very
amazing.
much
Thank
for-
you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Paul.
And now, if anyone would like to ask more questions, I don't know if you like to stay, but otherwise the meeting is done. Time is over, and we're adjourning.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
My email in the chat if you need it.
Thank you very much, Jen.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.